Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm Hari.
And I'm Kimi. Today, we are diving into a topic that, depending on how you look at it, either means absolutely nothing or changes literally everything. We are talking about the vast and complex world of nihilism.
That's right, Kimi. The word itself comes from the Latin term nihil, which translates simply to nothing. Add the ism suffix, and you get the literal ideology of nothing or the ideology of negation. It's a word that some sources suggest first emerged as a philosophical and literary concept in 18th century Germany, though it didn't develop into a cohesive ideology until 19th century Russia.
It sounds incredibly grim right off the bat, doesn't it? Most people throw the word around in everyday language to describe a rebellious teenager, a cynical villain, or just general antisocial attitudes. But as a family of philosophical views, it is actually incredibly diverse and intellectually rigorous.
Exactly. Nihilism isn't just one single perspective. It spans several major branches of philosophy, including ethics, value theory, epistemology, and metaphysics. At its core, it questions the existence of objectively meaningful purpose, moral value, absolute truth, or even the possibility of knowledge. It essentially became a broad cultural phenomenon that really started to pervade modernity in the Western world.
Let's start with a branch most people are probably familiar with: existential nihilism. This is the assertion that life, human existence in general, or even the world as a whole, lacks any objective meaning or higher purpose. It suggests that a genuinely meaningful life is fundamentally impossible.
It's the profound idea that all our efforts, our achievements, our happiness, and even our most senseless suffering are ultimately pointless on a cosmic scale. When you face that kind of realization, the practical reactions vary wildly. Some people face a terrifying existential crisis, deep depression, or lack of motivation.
But others find it weirdly liberating. Philosophers have proposed so many diverse reactions. Inspired by Indian philosophy, Arthur Schopenhauer suggested a highly pessimistic and ascetic response. He advocated for a total detachment from the world by renouncing your desires and stopping the affirmation of life entirely.
On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, Jean-Paul Sartre suggested that because there's no cosmic meaning handed down to us, we are completely free to create our own values through our free choices. You get to be the sole author of your own purpose despite the cosmic indifference. And Albert Camus argued for a defiant attitude. He examined the absurdity of trying to find meaning in an inherently meaningless universe. But he rejected suicide as an evasion of the human condition, advocating instead for a defiant rebellion against that meaninglessness to truly affirm our own freedom.
When arguing for existential nihilism, a lot of theorists point to biology and cosmology. From a biological standpoint, life is just driven by blind natural selection on a large scale, aiming at no higher purpose. And from a cosmological perspective, human existence is just a minor, totally insignificant aspect of a massive universe that does not care about our aspirations.
That cosmic indifference brings us right to moronihilism. If life has no inherent meaning, do right and wrong even exist? Moral nihilists, also known as amoralists or proponents of error theory, argue that there are no objective moral facts in the universe. They believe that moral theories rest on misguided assumptions without any foundation in external reality.
It's a complete rejection of the objective existence of morality. And this isn't just a rejection of what we are required to do. It makes you question what we are permitted to do. Some moral nihilists argue that without moral obligations, anything goes, and people are allowed to act however they want. Others say that if morality doesn't exist, we don't even have the framework for moral permissions either.
Now, if you thought questioning morality was deep, wait until we touch on epistemological nihilism. This branch essentially challenges the theory of knowledge, questioning whether objective knowledge or truth actually exist.
Relativism is a big part of this. It claims that truth, knowledge, and meaning are entirely relative to the perspectives of specific individuals, cultural contexts, or historical epochs. So a statement like, "the sun rises in the east," or "killing is wrong," might be true in one perspective and false in another.
And it goes further by stating there is no independent universal framework to judge which opinion is ultimately correct. But then radical skeptics take it a step further by denying the existence of knowledge entirely. They argue there is absolutely no foundation for any knowledge claims, not even basic common sense.
They point to things like René Descartes' famous dream argument. How do you know you aren't dreaming right now? Since you can never be absolutely certain that you aren't asleep, absolute certainty is impossible. And if absolute certainty is required for knowledge, then you literally don't know anything.
It's like the ultimate chicken or the egg problem. To judge what counts as knowledge, you need a standard or a criterion. But to establish that standard, you need prior knowledge. You just get completely stuck in an infinite loop.
And getting stuck is a great segue into metaphysical nihilism. This is the branch that looks at the fundamental nature of reality and asks, why is there anything at all? Metaphysical nihilists suggest that an entirely empty universe is possible. There is no fundamental reason why something exists rather than nothing.
They use this fascinating procedure called the subtraction argument. Think about it. The world could still exist if you removed one specific concrete object, like a single rock. If you apply that logic continuously, subtracting object after object at each step, you eventually end up with an entirely empty universe.
Speaking of objects, my absolute favorite and definitely one of the quirkier branches is mirological or compositional nihilism. Kimmy, brace yourself for this one. Tables do not exist.
Wait, what? I'm literally resting my hands and my microphone on a table right now.
According to mirological nihilists, composite objects, meaning things made up of smaller, proper parts, don't actually exist, so there are no tables, no houses, no cars. There are only non-composite, simple objects, like elementary particles. The table is just a collection of elementary particles that happen to be arranged table-wise.
That is absolutely wild. Proponents argue it deliberately uses metaphysical principles like Occam's razor to keep reality as parsimonious and simple as possible, dodging complicated paradoxes about parts and wholes like the ship of Theseus. But of course, opponents argue it completely contradicts everyday common sense.
Let's zoom out from elementary particles to the entire universe with cosmic nihilism. This view states that reality is unintelligible, blank, or chaotic, and completely indifferent to human understanding.
The philosopher Max Stirner characterized the world as a metaphysical chaos without any comprehensive structure of objective meanings. When you look at the vastness of space, it's easy to feel insignificant. It's a humbling, albeit terrifying perspective that leads to a deep sense of alienation.
Stirner is a fascinating figure. He also developed a form of nihilistic egoism that reduced other people to their mere usefulness to him, without any respect for their personhood. Not exactly the guy you want to invite to a dinner party.
Definitely not. But historically, the term nihilism really exploded in the 18th and 19th centuries, especially in Russia. And here's a fun fact, it was popularized by a literary character. Ivan Turgenev's novel, Fathers and Sons, featured a protagonist named Bazarov who followed a cold scientific rationalism.
Bazarov deeply distrusted authorities, openly expressing hate toward conventional beliefs, societal norms, and sentimentality. He aimed to dismantle them completely without any vision of what should replace them. He actually inspired the Russian nihilist movement of the late 19th century.
Right. This was a form of political nihilism reacting against the rigid social structures and authoritarian rule in Tsarist Russia. They weren't just writing angry letters, they wanted to violently tear down social institutions, and they resorted to extreme means to promote a radical social revolution, leading to violence, terrorism, arson, and assassinations.
It truly shows how a philosophical concept can leap off the page and fundamentally reshape the physical world. And you can't talk about nihilism reshaping the world without bringing up Friedrich Nietzsche. He's arguably the philosopher most associated with the term, though he viewed it more as a pervasive cultural trend and a crisis.
Yes, Nietzsche saw nihilism as a consequence of secularization. As traditional religious values faded, he worried people would lose the ideals guiding their lives. He drew a very sharp distinction between passive and active nihilism.
Passive nihilism masks its life-denying nature behind conventional morality, religious dogmas, and societal norms. But active nihilism openly acknowledges the lack of meaning and uses its negative, disruptive force to actively dismantle outdated, established values.
He wanted us to use it as a transitional phase, not a final destination. He believed that by going through active nihilism, individuals could liberate themselves from inherited dogmas and enthusiastically affirm life through a revaluation of all values.
This concept echoed through deeply throughout the 20th century. During World War I, we saw the rise of Dadaism in the art world. Dadaists expressed aspects of nihilism by embracing chaos, spontaneity, nonsense, and irrationality to protest and challenge established artistic standards.
Like Marcel Duchamp submitting a ready-made urinal titled Fountain to an art exhibition. It was an iconic, irreverent provocation against traditional art. And pop culture is steeped in nihilism too. You can see its themes in movies like Taxi Driver, A Clockwork Orange, Fight Club, and American Psycho.
Don't forget The Big Lebowski. The actual self-proclaimed nihilists in that movie are hilarious, even if their particular brand of nihilism isn't perfectly accurate to the dense philosophical texts we've been discussing.
Speaking of lesser-known forms, I was amazed to learn about medical or therapeutic nihilism. This is the controversial position that modern medical interventions are largely ineffective, arguing that research methodologies are flawed and heavily distorted by financial incentives.
Right. It suggests we systematically overestimate the benefits of modern treatments. There's also semantic nihilism in the philosophy of language, which argues that genuine communication is impossible because language fundamentally fails to accurately describe reality.
Which is pretty ironic for two people hosting a podcast. If semantic nihilism is true, we are just making arbitrary, meaningless noises at each other right now.
We probably are, Kimi. There's also black nihilism, a negative outlook with an Africana philosophy regarding the impossibility of reforming political and social systems to avoid anti-black racism. Nihilist views truly span across ethics, logic, politics, and even law.
It is fascinating how ancient all of this is, too. Protagoras, an ancient Greek sophist, essentially argued for what is often described as relativistic nihilism centuries ago when he said, "Man is the measure of all things," though academic philosophers still debate whether this was strict nihilism or just epistemological relativism. Even ancient Buddhist thought and the Indian school of Ajnana touched on the impossibility of knowledge and the pervasiveness of suffering in existence.
It just goes to prove that as long as humans have existed, we've been looking up at the sky, analyzing our surroundings, and wondering if any of this actually matters at all.
Whether you find the concept of nihilism deeply depressing, wonderfully liberating, or just a fun excuse to appreciate elementary particles arranged podcast-wise, it is an incredibly rich and enduring intellectual tradition.
Perfectly said, Kimi. Thank you all so much for joining us on this deep, slightly chaotic journey into nothingness. We will catch you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
This episode is based on the Wikipedia article Nihilism, which is available under the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license. This podcast was crafted using artificial intelligence.